the Heisman candidates come out yesterday, and I really thought if there were four, especially Hendon at 4 or 5, and it depends on how close the voting is as to how many people they invite. For those that don't know, so sometimes it's three, sometimes it's five. I would have thought four, Hooker definitely in, five, Hooker definitely in. I would have thought three, at least on my vote, that Hooker should have been in. He was not. So I just want to open it up to you and then Caleb, just your thoughts when you saw the four that did not include Hendon Hooker. I'll be honest with you. I did a double take on my phone because somebody sent it to me. Somehow they got it right before it went on ESPN, and it was one of the visual displays, and I thought it was a parody account. To be real honest with you, what were your thoughts when you saw that he wasn't in there? No slide against the guys that are in it, but that he wasn't there. Your thoughts?
I can cite the guys that are in it because I think, as we've talked about, I don't like Caleb Williams. I think his character should have prevented him from getting in the Heisman. But the fact that Hendon Hooker wasn't even on the ballot or wasn't even possibly going to be in New York was ridiculous, in my opinion. But I did notice that they pulled, strangely enough, they pulled a guy from each conference, from each Power Five, except
Hmm,
for,
that's a good
which
point.
was, yeah, except for the ACC, I think. So they pulled Stetson Bennett from the SEC. They pulled Caleb Williams from the Pac 12. They pulled Duggan from the Big 12. And then they pulled CJ Stroud from the Big 10. So they had one from each conference represented. They were all quarterbacks. The Stetson Bennett one is kind of a doozy for me, especially when.
Do you remember you and me joking about that about 6 weeks ago? Surely they wouldn't do that because it's a career award. Do you
Well,
remember we
he
joked about that?
yes, but he did
Did
not
not
in one
one
game. In one game, he did not throw a a passing touchdown, and I don't understand how you can possibly be put up in the Heisman if you don't throw a touchdown in a game. It shows me that the people that they chose, what they were more, I guess, what they cared about more was the fact that they played every game because they kept Hendon Hooker out and they kept Bryce Young out. And I think what they focused on was no injuries or no injuries that would keep them from playing in a game.
Frankly, I didn't think about the angle with Bryce Young, but you're right. Missing a game because of an injury. I want to tell you all my ballot, but I'm not supposed to, so I'm going to respect that. But I guess I'm slowly kind of giving it away. Bryce Young was a guy that I thought should be in the top three. I'll just say it that way. How about that? Caleb, what was your take? Amanda brought up a good point that I didn't think about, representing the four conferences. And I want to give a quick background, Caleb, before we go to you. There are about 1,600 voters. I don't think most have an agenda. I really don't. However, I think some aren't as tuned in and don't care to be. So they just go to the odd sheet, or they go to the last name they saw and they throw a name in there. So I think there are issues with the voting. But Caleb, what was your take on the four?
Yeah, it was. I think what's very clear is there's inconsistency in the voting, and there is historical inconsistency in the Heisman voting. The standards that they set to put some players in, they didn't apply with other players, unless, as Amanda points out, they had a new standard where you're not allowed to be injured at all this year, which is a dumb standard take. So, if you're going to put Stetson Bennett there, then what you're saying is you value team success, which we've seen them set that standard before. Fine. Not, I don't hate him the way Amanda does, but if you are going to value team success, you can't put Caleb Williams in there because he has 2 losses just like Hendon Hooker and just like Bryce Young. So if you're going to value team success, You can't put Caleb Williams in. But you can't put Stetson Bennett over Hendon Hooker in there unless team success is the only thing you value, because there is no metric in which Stetson Bennett is better than Hendon Hooker. And I don't like saying this because I actually like Stetson Bennett. I think his story is a great story. Wes Rucker was talking about this last night, where he was like, Stetson Bennett's a great story. Doesn't make him a Heisman contender, because there's nothing outside of Georgia's success as a team. There is no standard to say that Bennett belongs over Hooker. And if you're going to use Georgia's success as a team, then there's no reason you should have a quarterback who has 2 losses, just like Hooker and Young, in there. So this is what I've talked about for years. It's 1997 to a certain degree all over again, where with Peyton Manning, they applied a different standard to Peyton Manning than they had applied to every other Heisman winner in history up to that point. You know, the Peyton Manning didn't beat Florida, but the year before you gave it to Danny Warfel when he didn't beat Florida State. The year before that, you gave it to Eddie George when he didn't beat Ohio State. In 1956, you gave a 2-8 guy the Heisman over Johnny Majors and Jim Brown. So I think what's so frustrating looking at this ballot is, there's no clear-cut deserving winner this year, and I get it's hard, but yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to pile on Stetson Bennett, but there's no standard in which Stetson Bennett and Caleb Williams are both in the Heisman top 4, one or the other, son.
I want everybody to hit that like button, because the more you do that, the more it opens up to more people. And I want to get as many people and on board, because I want your opinions on how this went down and how hurtful this might be for the Tennessee fan base. Amanda, let me ask you this. How many quarterbacks could have done in the nation could have done what Stetson Bennett did for Georgia this season? Not even talking about last season. They won a national title, and they might do so, but it's supposed to be a one-year award. How many quarterbacks in the nation could have done what Stetson Bennett did or better, taking snaps with that defense and with that overall talent level?
I mean, just Washington himself, number 0, his tight end, just him. I feel like majority of the quarterbacks that are starting at Division I schools and some backups could have done exactly what Stetson Bennett did. If you put Hendon Hooker in there in Georgia's offense, then you have the Heisman winner like by game 6. Stetson Bennett is, maybe he's a good team leader, maybe he, whatever. He's not a good quarterback, and the Heisman Trophy is dead. We need a new trophy, or we need different voters. That's where we are right now.
I'm to that point. I'm to that point that I think I told you, Amanda. I don't know if I told Caleb. I spend a lot of time. I spend 2 or 3 hours going through and watching or checking tape and doing a lot of evaluation, Caleb. And I kind of feel like that time on Sunday was just kind of lost. I should have just chucked it. I don't go in with preconceived notions. I don't pretend to say that I've seen Max Duggan play every game, but I do go back through and look at every game for the contenders. And when I look at something like this, I feel like basically what Amanda said, there's a bunch of people who just sat down on a Sunday morning, or actually you can vote. Amanda pointed this out in the tweet. You can vote as early as Monday before the championship weekend, which makes no sense to me. But I feel like there's a lot of people who just said, oh, this dude. Well, this matters. I mean, it's supposed to matter. Maybe it doesn't anymore, but I don't care if it's Tennessee or not. For Hooker to not be in there was just disheartening. And but to turn it to a more personal level, and it's a video you can see now, a podcast on our YouTube channel. So please hit the like button and subscribe so more people can see that. Now, I talked to Jacob Warren about that, and I said, Hendon Hooker seems like a guy who wouldn't really care, that he's proud of what he's done, and that's fine. And he goes, man, he cares. Yeah, he's competitive. He wants to be there. And Caleb, I just thought the whole evening was just kind of a big bummer when I saw that come down. And again, I probably would have been okay if it was 3 people and maybe he's fourth, an odd man out. But to say he's not in the top four means somebody didn't do their homework.